He's talking about all the secrets have to come out. All the negative has to come out. We have to put it all on the table. It has to be presented to us very blatantly so that we understand what it is we've been dealing with. It's not hidden anymore. It's very out front. And because we're getting all that on the table and nothing is hidden anymore, it's very obvious when people are doing negative things now. So we can decide, is this the way we want our world to continue, or do we want to make the changes that will turn Earth into something more positive and more beneficial for all of humanity?
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today is a very special day. We finally get the one and only Darryl Anka, the amazing channeler Bashar. He's been doing this for 40 years. I'm sure that you've already know everything about Darryl, that he doesn't need an introduction. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Darryl.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Man, oh man, I was so excited to finally get an opportunity to talk with you. There's so many questions, so many people in our community have. You've been doing this for 40 years. That's an amazing accomplishment.
42.
42 years. You know, when I feel a lot of resonance with you. When I moved to LA, it was because I wanted to be a screenwriter. I wanted to be in movies and make movies and films. And so you were kind of doing that same thing before all this started, going back before everything started. It was your love for movies that brought you here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was started in the movie business in 1977, the year that Star Wars came out. I didn't work on that, but I worked on the first Star Trek movie and several movies after that, doing miniatures, sets, storyboards, stuff like that. Eventually got to write, produce, and direct three small indie films. But, making small indie films is not always a very lucrative way to make a
No.
living. So now I have, along with my wife, an escape room here in Los Angeles. So same skill sets, props, telling stories, but the customers are sort of the actors in the movie now.
Can I still watch those indie films? Is there one that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I believe that they're on Amazon Prime and on Tubi TV. Yeah, we did one called Dearly Departed, which is like as if we took a camera into the afterlife to talk to the spirits of the
Oh,
dead to get their take on life after death. We did one called First Contact, which is actually about how I became a channel and what Bashar is all about. And then we did a small little sci-fi thing called Alienated about a scientist, a skeptical scientist who doesn't know it but falls in love with a woman who actually turns out to be an alien.
I love it. There is from 1977 there, especially after Star Wars, there was a good, science fiction. As a science fiction super fan,
Mhm.
I could spend an entire thing talking about just movies and science fiction, but I better be careful because we got people that want me to ask other questions. But I would love to sit and vibe with you on that because I really do feel like let's bridge the gap on that. I really do feel like that movies are that one special place to sort of prepare us for disclosure and for the shift. It allows us to play with these ideas in our mind. Explain how the role of fiction and movies in helping us to understand what the world truly is, and how Bashar has helped you understand that.
Well, certainly in film, I mean, look at the progression and the arc that films have taken from the first time, maybe with the exception of The Day the Earth Stood Still. Most movies that depicted extraterrestrials were about invasion stories and they're taking over and they're wiping us out and all that. But now look at where we've gone with, films that came out like E.T., The Extraterrestrial, and now the last, three, you've got Arrival, you've got Project Hail Mary, and of course, upcoming Disclosure Day from Spielberg again. And now they're depicting more of a different relationship with an alien life form. So I think in that sense, our collective consciousness is preparing us for actual imminent contact by changing the narrative of how we interact with aliens in our entertainment.
as a science fiction fan, wanting those worlds to be true, and then reading the sort of and listening to Bashar explain the Sassani and the Sassani and you know what they
Mhm.
are. As somebody that's also essentially a fan, you wanted to know everything. I'm sure. Like, what is this world like, right? Um,
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think a lot of what winds up in science fiction is, some not always completely literal across the board, but I think we do pick up on what reality actually is and do integrate some of those concepts into our science fiction stories. Like, for example, in the original Star Trek TV series, they talked about a concept called the Prime Directive, where extraterrestrials don't interfere with societies that are not yet prepared to realize that extraterrestrials exist, that don't have the ability to get out into the stars. They leave that society to their own devices until they evolve to a certain point. And I do think that the writers picked up on an actual principle that has existed in the extraterrestrial community for quite some time, where Earth was for a while sort of under a hands-off policy until we arrived at a certain point. They would feed us information in various ways to see what we did with it, to get us prepared, to see if we would adapt it into our society and raise our vibration and get more used to the idea of extraterrestrial contact, which is where I think we are now, where, we're now having congressional hearings on UFOs, UAPs. It's being taken more seriously than it ever has been. And so I think that's a really positive sign that we are preparing the general public, in a sense, to realize that we've never been alone and that we are now about to imminently be introduced to extraterrestrials that have been involved with us for a long, long time.
Now, Bashar has explained that Sassani are essentially 500 light years 500 years in the future, right?
Well, 500
Explain
light
that.
years, 500 light years in the direction of the Orion constellation, but they're in a
Right.
parallel reality. They move 10 times faster than we do. We would, in a sense, consider them from our perspective to be in the future, but they
Okay.
do coexist with us simultaneously. It's just that their reality moves faster than ours, vibrationally speaking. So we can't see their star system unless we shift into their reality. Conversely, that our universe is invisible to them unless.
For the last 8 years, I've spent a lot of time working with my community and trying to understand parallel realities because a lot of people that I've worked with have had experiences where they were pretty sure that they had shifted or seen glitches in their reality. And Bashar is somebody that really speaks to this. So first of all, can you encapsulate what Bashar has shared about the nature of shifting into different realities in consciousness?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on your momentary state of being, because again, remember, we all are existing on higher planes, but by having a physical experience, we to some degree have limited our ability to remember that for various reasons. But now and then we can slip back into that perspective of being able to perceive multiple dimensions all at once. It usually is temporary in this reality because it doesn't necessarily serve the purpose of allowing us to live our physical experiences that we've laid out for ourselves. It takes us out of that moment, but it also gives us a glimpse into a higher reality, into a higher state of being, a higher frequency, probably mostly for the purpose of then learning how to reach for that frequency while still remaining grounded in that physical reality, so we can express more of who we are, more of the soul that we are, and be of service and assistance to others in that way as well. So the idea is that all these things coexist. Bashar often uses the analogy of a television, because he's saying, look, when you're watching one particular program on your TV, you know that there are dozens and dozens of other programs playing at the same time, but you only see the one you're tuned to. If you change the channel, you get another program. And that doesn't mean the program you were just watching has disappeared or gone away. It's still playing. So if you look at that idea and that structure as analogy for how things actually exist, and there are multiple realities, multiple universes, all in the same, let's say, meta space, so to speak, but you only see what you're tuned to, what your vibrational frequency is tuned to. But if momentarily, suddenly, for one reason or another, you shift and change channels, you start getting a different glimpse of a different reality. And in this day and age, you might even be able to get glimpses of more than one simultaneously because our consciousness is expanding. And when our consciousness expands, then you can see more of what exists at the same time. And sometimes that may be more than one reality.
One aspect of this that we've explored is and I'd love to get what your thoughts are on, is connecting to a specific future self version of ourselves and almost becoming entangled because all of time exists at the same time, becoming entangled with a specific future version of ourselves and almost communicating with them.
Mhm.
Has Bashar ever spoken to that?
Well, in a sense, that's what the channeling of him is about.
Right,
uh,
right.
he acts as a look, this is where you can go. I can represent what you can be in your own terms, in your own reality, but you can certainly let this idea of who I am rub off on you sufficiently so that you can upgrade your vibration and be your version of me in your reality, being that he represents something more advanced, something more evolved. So yeah, the idea, and this is one of the reasons why he gives us sort of an instruction manual that he calls the formula, because it's designed specifically to allow us to raise our frequency and tap into whatever we need and receive whatever we need more clearly from whoever or wherever we need to receive it from. That will help us evolve and move forward in a more accelerated way, be that future selves, be that our guides, our spirit team, our soul family, extraterrestrials, whatever that is that we need to connect to that represents moving forward and evolving, we can tap into by using the formula that he gives us. That's why he gives it to us. It makes it easier for that to happen. It makes us better receivers, better antennas for higher frequency information.
And it's really simple and brilliant. It's not complicated. The word excitement becomes very unique and powerful, a very specific frequency. And as I've played with that and worked with that particular exercise, and I go back in time and I remember when was I was the most excited. And I start to understand the very unique flavor of that vibration, and essentially that's where we want to go. It's a guiding principle. It's really brilliant. I love it. So
Yeah, that's why I like the fact that he grounds these ideas in something very tangible, because he's explaining, you've heard that for a long time, follow your bliss, act on your dreams, so on and so forth. But he's basically telling us, why does that work? And it's basically because what we translate as the physical sensation of passion and excitement is actually our physical translation of messages from our soul saying, this is who you are. This is your true vibrational frequency. This is the next step on your path, is to act on the things that contain this kind of energy, because that's what's going to help you accelerate through the lessons and the experiences that you chose to have as a soul having a physical experience. So we're being guided by what we translate as the energy and frequency of passion, excitement, creativity, love. That's what actually keeps our, let's say, our compass needle pointing to our true north. So as long as we follow that, everything gets more smooth. It's easier to face challenges. It's easier to extract the lessons from those challenges that can help us move forward. Ignoring that by not acting on our passion, not acting on our excitement in specific ways, is what causes all the trouble, because then we're trying to be something we're not. We're ignoring our fun.
it has worked tremendously for me.
Yeah.
People have so many questions. There's so many little bits of information. Um, My question to you is, what were the what were the things that you were most interested when you started hearing from Bashar, when you started getting information, when people would ask, and that were really shocking and interesting bits of information that you had learned through your channelings and your experience and connection with
I
Bashar?
mean, one of the first things I was very curious about, once I understood that this was something connected to extraterrestrial
Yeah.
knowledge, was, how do your spaceships work? How do you get from one star to another? What
Right.
what is that principle? And I got the download in a split second, but it took me hours to write it all out and explain it to myself in our language. And now I understand the principle that they basically use, which, I mean, for lack of a better term, is basically referred to as resonance relocation. So, in other words, everything is a vibration, everything is frequency of energy, and different places, different locations are represented by different frequency signatures. So, they've learned when you're talking about interstellar travel, they've learned that the location of one star system and the location of another star system have two completely different vibrational signatures. And if they can isolate their ship from any particular signature, sort of unlocking themselves from any universal frequency and impose upon their ship the frequency of the destination they're interested in going to, then the ship will stop existing at the place they were and start immediately existing at the place that they've imposed upon it as a vibrational frequency. So they're not traveling through space in that sense over long distances. They're simply redefining their location in space-time, because to them, distance is an illusion. And it's like the TV analogy we already talked about. Everything exists here and now. Every location in existence is here and now. And if you learn how to change the channel, changing the frequency, you stop existing at the first location and you start existing at the second one. It's just redefining where you are in relation to everything else in the cosmos. So that's how they've learned to travel great distances. When they're talking about just, local travel, yes, they're using probably electromagnetic and gravitic fields and things like that in a different way of manipulating things that are physical or energetic. But in terms of long distance star travel, it's not so much that they travel. They can also use things like wormholes and stuff like that, portals, what have you. But the basic principle is resonance relocation, because they understand that an object in location A has a different signature frequency than that same object, or what we think of as the same object, in location B. So they've been able to isolate that locational variable and change it at will.
So it's more like instant teleportation. There's no warp bubble.
Well, no, but there can be a bubble that isolates them so that they're sort of in a neutral space so they can impose whatever locational frequency they want on the ship and the crew.
Another fascinating aspect of this, especially as I listen to other channelers, is the sort of groupings of different races. You hear about the Galactic Federation, and in your case, the Association of Worlds and the Confederation. All of these different groups. Explain a little bit more about the Association of Worlds and sort of how they are in comparison to these others.
Well, no, it's the same thing. It's just different
Yeah.
terminology for the same idea.
Okay.
Uh, you can call it a federation, you can call it association, you can call it an interstellar alliance. It's the same thing. Um, it's just, different civilizations have different ways of referring to the idea that there are collective groups that are very advanced, that are in some way, shape, or form guiding, different civilizations that all belong to it. And, yes, there may be slightly different groups, but they do generally interact in a variety of ways. And they're composed of many different, species, many different races, like, the Pleiadians and Arcturans and the Sirius beings and so on and so forth. We'll be given more information about that after open contact happens, because in a sense, open contact is the beginning of Earth itself becoming a member of the Galactic Society, and therefore a new member of the Association of Worlds or the Federation or whatever you want to call it. So we'll be given more information about our position within that collective after open contact.
A common theme is that the open contact is coming very soon, maybe within a year. Tell me what you have learned.
Well, that is basically the end result of a progressive exposure to more and more ET and UFO information. You know, what you see right now when you have congressional hearings about UAPs, UFOs, when military people can come forward and talk about their sightings, when government people can come forward, when people who have been on the inside of clandestine organizations that have been involved in things like crash retrieval of UFOs, reverse engineering of UFOs, when they can start talking and when they come forward and they're taken seriously, that's a huge change from even 5 years ago. So, that's a good sign to me that that is a stepping stone toward the idea of ETs being introduced openly to our society and basically told, look, these beings have been here, they've been working with us behind the scenes, and now it's okay for us to know that this is going on in general. So I see this progression leading up to the idea of imminent open contact where it's publicly known that ETs exist. Whatever the steps are in there that still need to happen, it could be, that ships will show themselves more clearly. They'll appear on the 11 o'clock news more clearly, things like that. So it's like, okay, these things are really here. Everyone now knows that. And once we accept that, then, there can be some sort of official either press conference or State of the Union address or State of the World address or something that says, all right, now's the time, bit by bit, at whatever pace we're comfortable, for the general public of the world to know that these beings are here, that they're fine, they're friendly, don't worry about it. They've been helping us in certain ways. And now we get to interact with them more openly because now we're given the option. It doesn't mean that everyone has to start accepting that right away, because I'm sure there's going to be dozens of different reactions, all the way from relief and gratitude to fear. And so it's just going to depend on how long it takes different groups to acclimate to the fact that there is this other option now. But I think we have to be given the option to know that ETs exist and that we can interact with them and that can change our society in very beneficial ways for humanity. I think we have to be given that option sooner than later because it's going to take us a couple of decades to acclimate to what that actually means for our society. And so I think they have to deliver that information so that we know we have the choice, we have the option, and then we can make of it what we will over time.
So true. I'm sure it's been inevitable in the last 40 years at some point. Some important person in the government or maybe in an unknown capacity has reached out to you and said, "Okay, we need your help. Can you help us in understanding what's going on?" Is that the case at some point?
That
Somebody
has
important.
never blatantly happened. No, it has
Ah,
may have clandestinely happened, but it has never blatantly happened.
and so that's phenomenal that they wouldn't at least reach out to you to try to understand or just as an information gathering.
Well, again, there may have been people in the audience that are absorbing the information without necessarily revealing who they are. So, but they haven't exposed themselves to me that way.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of the Earth and our solar system? Sort of tells us a little bit about what we can move to the future. I'm sure you've learned things that we don't quite see in our skies, things like Maldek and other planets in our solar system, and what they went through in their path. Has Bashar
Well,
spoken
that's
about it?
that's a huge story. Um, in a nutshell, what Bashar has talked about in terms of Earth is that it's a repository where many different stories from many different places are sort of going through a process of change to come up with more positive endings. So, in other words, there's been long stories about the ancient systems in the Orion constellations being very oppressive. There have been stories about, a lot of negative things happening that destroyed the civilization that used to be on Mars. There have been, stories about things being destroyed like Atlantis. So basically, he's saying right now at this time, a lot of the souls are incarnating on Earth from all of these different stories to sort of find a way of bringing those stories to a more positive end. And that's helping with the evolution of humanity because basically, Earth is a soul school and it's a very challenging school. It's a university. It's not like a kindergarten. It's where souls go to accelerate their growth. So they bring with them a lot of these energies of the different stories where they may not necessarily have succeeded and are using the Earth School to play out those ideas again, positive, negative, transforming darkness to light, limitation to freedom, negative to positive, so that it aids and assists in humanity moving forward and evolving by taking advantage of all the different souls from all the different stories that are now playing out here in this melting pot on Earth as an advanced school for souls. And that's one reason why it's so important to the extraterrestrials as well. Even though there may be some other planets in the universe that are similar in terms of what Earth is experiencing, Earth is still extremely unique in terms of the concentration of the kind of experiences that we have here, the polarity experiences that allow us to experience great darkness, to give us the opportunity to learn how to master that and transform that into something positive. So this to Bashar, from Bashar's perspective, Earth is a master graduating class, not a kindergarten. It's for souls to really advance themselves very quickly, just like going into a university to learn, things that you would never learn in kindergarten or elementary school.
And I would speak to the present moment. People looking at their watching their news
Hmm.
would not necessarily say, "Hey, we're moving towards the light. Things are going great." Even Bashar's discussion of events that were to come. Should we be concerned
No,
about the path that we're on?
no, not concerned, but aware. In other words, we have a saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. So the idea is we're at a point where all the secrets, when he talks about this being the year of disclosure, he's not just talking about UFO information. He's talking about all the secrets have to come out. All the negative has to come out. We have to put it all on the table. It has to be presented to us very blatantly so that we understand what it is we've been dealing with. It's not hidden anymore. It's very out front. And because we're getting all that on the table, and nothing is hidden anymore. It's very obvious when people are doing negative things now. So we can decide, is this the way we want our world to continue, or do we want to make the changes that will turn Earth into something more positive and more beneficial for all of humanity? So at the end of a cycle, when you're about to make a great shift, it's always darkest before the dawn. You always see all the negative stuff come out because, again, you have to be able to see it and assess whether or not that's what you want to continue so that you can either say, yeah, sure, let that continue, and or what do we want something different. So we have to see it all so that we can make a choice. And this is the time of choosing. That's why it's all coming out on the table. That's why it's so chaotic.
So, is there any role in any that Bashar instructs that we, as an awakened beings, can play in this transition? I know that many people in my community come to me and they feel a responsibility. They don't want to just sit on their couch and watch. They feel like, "Hey, I want to make a difference in this. What can we do?"
Well, this is why he gives us the formula. You have to act on your passion. You have to follow that course because when you do, you create within you a living example to others of what they can do as well. And you share your gifts, your talents, your skills, your information with others when it's appropriate. What they do with it is none of your business. They don't have to believe you. They don't have to take advantage of what you can do to help them. But you have to do the things that are going to turn you into a living example of the choices that others could make that are more positive for their life. So you have to be an active participant in providing an opportunity for others and being of service to others, but you do have to act. You do have to do it physically. You can't just sit and meditate about it. That's all well and good, and you can upgrade and energy and information and make things more possible. But this is a physical reality, and the language of physical reality is physical action. So you have to translate the idea of your energy into something demonstrable to people. You have to actually share your skills, share your talents, share your gifts with others, help them, uplift them by providing these services to them. And that way people start seeing and sensing that, oh, maybe this is something that I can be inspired to do, and I can find my passion, and I can share my gifts and talents and skills with others that can help them up the ladder as well. So yeah, we each, by following the formula that Bashar gives us, or by whatever method works for you, can be of service to others by being our true selves and actually being willing to take the actions necessary that are representative of the actions we would be taking if we already lived in the kind of world we say we prefer to have. So we have to demonstrate that through our actions.
One of the key aspects of this transition is sort of coming together in groups. I know that you notice it when you have your channelings and workshops. Many, in fact, somebody in the group asks, many people feel called to create intentional communities, physical and virtual. From Bashar's perspective, what are the key principles that will allow New Earth communities to thrive without repeating the hierarchy, control, and fragmentation pattern of that old paradigm?
Well, again, it's what I just said. You have to be of service to people. It's not about being in charge. It's about serving others and providing things that actually uplift them. When you serve the whole, you're part of the whole. You will get served. If you're only serving yourself, in a sense, you're cutting yourself off from how the whole can serve you too. So if you serve the whole, you will be served because you're part of the whole. You have to think holistically. You have to think about everyone, not just yourself and what you're getting out of it. You have to be of service to others. So anyone that acts from being of service to the whole will not in any way, shape, or form a kind of hierarchical thing. Yes, they may have a little bit more insight, and yes, maybe they're giving you some principles that would be good to follow. But again, they also allow you to adapt that to whatever works for you. It's not about having ultimate control. It's not about saying, look, this is the only way. You have to do it my way or the highway. That's not what it's about. It's about understanding how to validate all the differences in terms of the way people function in order to actually create harmony. So harmony is not about homogenizing everyone and having them move in lockstep to your command. It's about validating how the differences are compatible with one another and how they can work together to create a better world for everyone.
Yeah. So it feels to me when I'm in those groups, in a group setting, that's when these energies and changes really start to come about. And in many cases, it feels like the negative polarity, what we might call the dark side, which is still a part of us, is trying to stop us from connecting in those ways. That is actively going about finding ways for us to stay at home, stay on our phone, is doing what they can to at least, because those connections are a really big part of the shift. And
Yes,
I'd
but
love,
as you
yeah,
said, that's inside us. It's not an outside force doing that to us. That's our negative and fear-based beliefs. That's how they work. You see, remember, physical reality is not, in a sense, a real place. It is the product of what we believe to be true about ourselves. And it's based on the agreement that we have on a soul level with each other about what game we're playing. We're playing the physical reality game. But in order for physical reality to continue to perpetuate itself, because it's just a projection of consciousness, you have to create a belief system within your physical mind that says, look, this is real, this is true. Now, when we have positive beliefs about ourselves, we don't have a problem with the reinforcement that comes from those beliefs because it's positive and we enjoy that. But when we have negative beliefs, fear-based beliefs, they're going to do the same thing because beliefs have to perpetuate themselves in order for you to continue to have a physical reality experience. So when negative beliefs try to perpetuate themselves, they can only do it in negative ways. That's the way they're designed. It's not a malicious thing. It's just this is how negative beliefs reinforce themselves by getting you to feel that they're real, by getting you to think they're real, by getting you to behave as if they're real. So you get the reflection that what they're telling you is true. And then that reinforces the negative reality that you're experiencing. So when you understand how belief systems actually mechanically work, and that beliefs reinforce whatever it is you decide is true about yourself in any given situation, then you'll understand, well, if I believe more positive things about myself, that's what's going to get reinforced. If I believe more negative things about myself and the world, that's what's going to get reinforced. It doesn't have a mind of its own. It's taking its cue from what people are saying within themselves is true, and therefore reinforcing that. And when you understand that's how it works, then you understand mechanically, well, there's no real difference in terms of how the belief is reinforced based on what I believe. It's going to take its cue from whatever I believe to be true, and it's not going to contradict that. So when we fall into the idea of saying, oh no, this negative thing is true, is real, well, okay, but we're the ones that are allowing it to become more real than anything else by simply holding on to beliefs that say, oh, it's difficult to change these things. This is the way things are. What you prefer to be true is a fantasy. You will have disappointment. You will fail at that. All these things are the ways that negative beliefs have of making sure we don't let them go. But if you understand that's just a mechanism within us, then you can say, well, I don't have to buy that. That's just a story the negative belief is telling me, so I won't let it go because that's how it perpetuates itself. But I understand that's how beliefs work. Therefore, I can decide what I want to believe is true. And therefore, I can switch to more positive beliefs about myself because I know since the universe is actually unconditionally supportive, it's going to support me in a positive belief just as strongly as it supported me in a negative one.
One of my favorite, most fascinating channelings of Bashar that I've watched multiple times is when Bashar is asked about artificial intelligence, and Bashar sort of shares that Bashar is a kind of form, but we don't really understand it, of artificial intelligence, way beyond what we understand. So I would love for you to share what that is, because I found it super interesting and fascinating, and it made me really believe and understand what Bashar was more than other channel sources.
Well, yeah, see, the thing of it is a lot of people just sort of have this idea, that certain extraterrestrials that operate on a very high frequency are just these physical beings walking around on a planet or flying around in spaceships. They're a lot more than that. They're a lot different than that. On that level on which they operate interdimensionally, it's almost something indescribable. And it does include what we typically are calling artificial intelligence in this day and age, but it's something way beyond that term because from their point of view, it's true intelligence. It's not really artificial. It's tapping into the intelligence of the universe. And there may be artificial devices through which that intelligence can be made to express itself, but you're not dealing with artificially created intelligence. You're dealing with an artificial device that allows real intelligence to express itself. We're not there yet in our technology, but the ETs are and have been for quite some time. So they are quite deeply intertwined and integrated with what we're calling artificial intelligence. But our terminology and our understanding of it is a far cry from what it is they actually experience as being connected to interdimensional awareness and intelligence. We have really yet to understand what a lot of these ETs are in their very nature. They're very different than the science fiction depiction of just a physical alien that we can shake hands with and say, hi, welcome to Earth. There are ETs like that, but some of the ones we've been dealing with that are of a very, very high frequency are much, much more than that. They are not exactly confined to the idea of physical reality. It's what Bashar has called themselves quasi-physical. They exhibit traits of physicalness and traits of spirit. So time and space and things like that are exceptionally flexible to them. They come in and out of dimensions. It's like walking through a living daydream for them constantly. So I think we have a ways to go before we really understand the true nature of the extraterrestrial consciousness that we've been dealing with. But we'll
Mhm.
get it over time.
Yeah. One thing I'm super fascinated about is the sun and what the sun really is and the nature of the sun in our solar system. I want to know what Bashar has said about what the sun is, and we see it as just this object that heats us,
Yeah.
but to me it feels like it's alive, that it's
Everything is
playing
alive.
a role.
Everything is alive. Everything is made out of consciousness. There's nothing else to make anything from. Now, it's a very different form of consciousness, and on a physical level, it is pretty much exactly what we say it is. But that's on the physical level. But everything has higher levels to it. Everything has other levels of consciousness to it, and can be experienced in a different way when we are capable of seeing it through different dimensional eyes, through our different dimensional senses. So, yeah, it's this and that. It's not this or that. It's this and that. It has a physical level that we can relate to. It has a higher spiritual dimensional level that we can also learn to relate to. But everything is made of consciousness. A rock has consciousness. It's just very different from the kind of way we expressed the idea of consciousness. It's a different form of consciousness.
Do you think there are beings living on the sun?
No, not
No.
in our physical reality, no. In, again, other dimensions, there can be life forms that can, for whatever reason, I'll just use the word inhabit a star, and the star itself can be viewed as a life form. But we're not talking about the physical level. We're talking about something that is on a much higher dimensional plane.
And one thing that Bashar's discussed is our actual movement through densities of consciousness. And I really appreciated Bashar's explanation. Seemed much more vivid. We're in a third density, at least in one. There's many different schools that kind of explain the different levels of consciousness. Tell me what you've learned about what sort of consciousness that we're going to enter into. Maybe it's hundreds of years from now. What this world will be like in a higher level, higher density of consciousness.
Well, okay. He explains density and dimension in this way. He's saying, look, densities are a vibrational frequency within a certain dimensional level. So, in other words, it's like states within a country. So, you have, California and Arizona and Texas and all that within the United States. So, you're looking at the idea of the fourth dimension, three of space, one of time. And in the fourth dimension that we are experiencing, we have different density states, third density, fourth density, so on and so forth. So that is a representation of the frequency that we're operating at. We're operating at a lower frequency. We are transitioning to a higher frequency of physical reality, which we're calling the fourth dimension. When we transition to fifth density, we're actually crossing the border into another country, into the fifth dimension, which is non-physical. That starts the level of spirit, the dimension of spirit. Now we can tap into it and are tapping into it to inform our ability to transition from third to fourth density. But fourth density is just a higher form of physical reality, a higher form of what we're experiencing now. So it's a dimension or a reality, an expression of peace, joy, harmony, love, creativity. That's what the world is going to become in the decades ahead, because we're going to learn, especially after open contact, when the ETs can instruct us to learn to be more harmonious, to learn to be more creative, to learn to do things technologically for the benefit of all that are non-destructive, non-polluting, all that kind of stuff. Earth will become a paradise. But the idea is that when you go into fifth density, literally you are leaving the physical realm. You're going into a spirit realm. And that's where Bashar is. He's saying we're quasi-physical. So they literally have one foot in physical reality and one foot in spirit. And they're transitioning from fourth to fifth dimensionality, from fourth to fifth density. So that's the way kind of he explains it from their point of view. Um, but it's just about, again, ascending. It's about raising your vibrational frequency to become a better receiver of higher frequency information and experiences.
Can you talk about the nature of dreams? and how that affects our consciousness and
Yeah.
what they are?
Well, dreams can be many different things. They can just be that you're processing things going on in your physical life. That can be one thing. They can also be a memory of having had an astral out of body experience, but your physical mind is going to try and make sense out of something it may not be able to completely make sense out of because it's happening in another reality level. And therefore, the dream may seem confusing or nonsensical because physical mind only has so many props to represent what it is that you may have actually experienced when you were asleep and having an astral projection when you were actually in the spirit realm, because that's what's happening to a lot of people when your physical consciousness is sleeping, when you're unconscious. You are having experiences on a higher plane. You may not always remember them, or if you do, you may remember them as a dream, unless the dream becomes lucid, where you become awake in the dream state and aware that you're actually having an astral experience. So, it's just a matter of what we're aware of and what the dream may represent in terms of whether we're just processing information to help us with what's going on in our physical lives, or whether we're tapping into our soul blueprint to figure out what it is we've set up for ourselves and preparing ourselves for what's ultimately going to manifest in physical reality that we've laid out on our soul blueprint for this life, or whether we're having experiences by communicating with extraterrestrials or our guides or our soul family or angelic beings or whatever, whether we're attending classes on another level to learn stuff. There are so many different things that can be happening in what we call a dream. What we remember as a dream. It can be for many different reasons on many different levels.
One thing I'd like to know is sort of the difference between like a lucid dream and then other dreams. And does us becoming lucid in our dreams help us in our path towards achieving our goals or changing our realities?
Well, absolutely it can, because when you become lucid in the dream state, you know that you are on a different plane and you can control what is going on in the dream. And that can actually give you practice to understand that physical reality, in a sense, is also another type of dream. So when you become lucid in your dream state, it can actually help you become lucid in the physical dream and understand that we're creating this dream, we're creating this reality experience, and it can give you more control over what's going on because you understand that it's a projection, and it can help you face the challenges that you laid out for yourself on this life path in much more positive ways to get a much more beneficial effect. So becoming lucid in the dream state can help you become more lucid in the physical state, and vice versa. This is another reason why, again, Bashar gives us the formula. It can help you become more lucid in the physical dream, and that can also help you become more aware of what you can do in the non-physical state as well. And so it can go in both directions.
Is there what's the best technique to become more lucid in our dreams? That
I'm sure there are many different techniques. Different techniques work differently for different people. So I don't have one particular thing that would work. There are many books out there that talk about practices to help you with lucid dreaming, and I would just simply recommend to do whatever you're attracted to do.
Tell us what Bashar shares about the afterlife and the nature of the afterlife and moving through reincarnation. What has Bashar shared with us about that aspect of life?
A lot. I mean, in a very ironic way, he's basically referring to our physical reality as the afterlife, because to him, the soul level is the primary experience, and therefore this is the afterlife. So it's our natural state. We are non-physical energy. We're non-physical consciousness. This is a projection happening, within our consciousness, this physical realm. It's not like we've left the spirit realm. We're there right now, but we're having this physical dream we've imposed upon our consciousness for certain purposes, for us to learn certain things, for us to grow, for us to discover new things in different ways. That's what it's for. So the soul will decide what it's going to experience, what challenges it's going to face, and how that will help the soul learn new things and how it will help it grow. And that will also expand creation as well, because the structure of existence never changes. What changes is our relationship to it, our experience of it, our perspective of it. That's how creation expands. And that's what physical reality is to some degree for, is allowing a soul which has access to everything and anything when it's in a non-physical state to experience the idea of discovering something new by forgetting who it is so it can remember who it is from a new point of view. That's how creation expands because it changes the perspective we have of our relationship to existence. So the soul chooses this life path, an incarnation, you would say, chooses what it's going to experience as a personality, how it's going to face those challenges, what lessons it's going to learn. Now, it does that from its own free will. When we become physical, we have our own version of free will. It's a little more limited than the version the soul has because the soul has already chosen, or our soul, we are our soul. We've already chosen what we're going to experience as this incarnation in general. So there are going to be specific lessons that we're going to learn, specific experiences that we're going to have because we've chosen those experiences as a soul. Once we're embedded in the physical dream, our physical minds have a limited free will, but nevertheless still free will to experience how we face those challenges. We can face them quickly, slowly. We can change the scale and scope of those things. How many people do we affect? 5,000, 5 million? How many expressions of our truth do we explore? 1, 2, 20? You know, how much of ourselves do we want to bring through? Do we want to ignore all our lessons and wait till the next incarnation? We can do all of that, but those life path choices have already been chosen by the soul that we are. Those challenges, those lessons will be presented to us. How we face them is up to the free will of the physical mind, but we will face them.
One concept I'm starting to see on a repeated basis is the idea that karma has changed, that there's no longer the same karma that we had before. Can you explain or talk about the changes in karma?
It's not that karma has changed, it's that our definition of karma has changed because karma has always meant the same thing. Karma in the ancient Sanskrit language simply means action. That's what the word means, action. So when you understand that you're out of balance with yourself, if you take the actions to rebalance yourself, you have erased your karma right then and there because you have taken the action, the karma necessary to bring yourself back into your aligned frequency. That's all karma is. We have surrounded the concept of karma with all sorts of mythological and folkloric concepts. So it's our definition that has changed. Karma has always been what it is. It's simply the actions you take to course correct. That's all it is.
But more along the lines that we're not tied to past lives, that we don't have to make up for past lives like maybe we did in the past.
No,
We can let that go.
no, you didn't. See, the thing of it is you may think that while you're physical, but once you return to spirit, you realize that that's not the case. You can do whatever you want. Now, if you really insist, okay, well, I ignored that lesson in my last incarnation. I would like to have that lesson again because I would really like to learn it. Well, you're the one making that decision to have that lesson again in the next incarnation. You're not forced to do it. You want to do it because it's important to you as a soul. But there's no karma in the sense of, oh, well, if you did this in your past life, you are absolutely determined that it's going to happen to you in the next life. No, there's no rule that's imposed on anyone. You have absolute free will, absolute free choice as a soul when you return to the spirit level, when you wake up from physical reality into your natural state. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to do that again or even when or how you want to incarnate or where you want to incarnate. You could decide to have an incarnation on another planet. You could stay in another dimension. You could continue to explore spirituality in the spirit realm. You can do anything you are capable of imagining at that point. You will consult with your spirit team about what might be a good idea for you, for your personal growth as a soul, because you all have spirit teams. We all do. Angelic guides, personal guides, soul family, all that. So, you'll have groups and friends and stuff, and you'll discuss, well, what would be a good idea for me to do in my next incarnation if I choose to have one? Well, maybe you want to try this and maybe you want to try that. But it's completely up to you. You're absolutely free when you return to the soul level to decide what you're going to do next. Absolutely free. Nothing is forced on you.
In watching some of your sessions, some of my favorite is when Bashar's answering a question, talking about somebody's particular connections with somebody else in the audience. Oh, you've been in like 10 different lives together, and I always find that super interesting. The way that we are connected through our past
Well,
lives
we have soul
in this life.
families. Yeah, we have soul families. We have groups of people that work well together. We've had experiences with each other. It's just like you have friends and family in physical reality. We work well together. And many times, soul family members will incarnate together and play out different roles for one another by agreement. I'll be your mother this time. You'll be my daughter. You'll be my son. I'll be your father. You'll be my cousin. You'll be my best friend. You'll be my mortal enemy. It's look at it like a stage play. You've got the hero on the stage and you've got the villain on the stage, and they interact in a certain way, and the audience is watching the play and they're learning a lot out of what's happening in the play. But when the play is over, the two actors that are playing the hero and the villain go out and have a beer together because they're friends, but they've been playing roles for the audience to learn lessons. So if you look at life kind of and physical reality that way, it's a much broader understanding of how soul family members choose to take on different roles and play different parts for each other to learn.
What I've always suspected is that when we go through an era, a generation, that it's a grouping of souls that have also lived together. Like the people of Atlantis might have all known each other, and then they all come back together during a particular decade. So what we're seeing on is a bunch of people that we've been doing this, on a worldwide scale together for a long time. It's a connection on linear aspects like that,
Well, that's what
right?
I'm saying. You have soul
Yeah,
families that decide
yeah.
throughout time we're going to work to, I mean, because you have thousands of soul family members. It's not just two or three. You have thousands of soul groups that decide we're going to play out these parts over the next 5,000 years. That's the way time works on Earth, but it doesn't matter to us. And we're going to keep coming back and we're going to play these different roles because this is all what we want to learn. You have to really look at it on a much higher dimensional level about all the different ways in which souls understand how it is they want to learn things and have experiences. So it's constantly changing and constantly interacting. And yeah, it can go for generations and generations and generations.
Somebody in the group's asking, is there a relationship between self-love and open contact?
Absolutely. Because the more that we are giving ourselves the unconditional love, the higher our vibration is, and the more vibrationally compatible we are with extraterrestrials who operate on that high self-love level as well. Because unconditional love is it's what we call unconditional love is the frequency of existence itself, the frequency of creation. We translate that into the term unconditional love. So ETs that operate on that very high frequency, of course, if you're giving yourself that same frequency of love and you elevate your vibration because of it, you're going to be more compatible with the idea of open contact with beings of a similar nature. So that's why Bashar said, you guys have to meet us halfway. We can't come down to your level. You have to kind of come up and meet us halfway. We can come down a little bit and help you up, but we're not coming down to the lower vibrational level. You have to raise yourself, and that way you are capable.
Another question is, what does a truly awakened civilization value that our current civilization does not?
Each other. Again,
Yes, thank you.
you look at each other like pieces of a puzzle picture. Everyone has a unique shape. Every puzzle piece has a unique shape, but the unique shape they are made to be fit with all the other shapes. So if you're trying to be a shape that you're not, then you don't fit and you don't create the whole puzzle picture that can support all the pieces. So valuing and validating the differences in each other, the uniqueness of each other, the gifts each other have to share with all, is what creates the harmony, creates the whole picture that can then support all the pieces. So it's valuing each other, it's communicating with each other, it's learning who we are, it's understanding this. One time, a lot of times people will ask the question, who are you? But one time I was asked, what are you? And I had to think about it for a moment because it was such an unusual question. And I realized by sort of checking in with Bashar about that idea and how to answer that question, what are you? I realized that the answer is basically, I am you from another point of view. You are me from another point of view. We are all interconnected. And we have to know that, and we have to act like we know that in order to change the way we experience the world. Because again, this is the thing behind, what you do to the least of these, you do to me, that Jesus said, right? Or whatever version of that exists in any other religion. What you do to me, what you do to the world, you do to me, you do to others, you do to me. We're all connected. We're all different aspects of the same one thing. Whatever you want to call that, God, goddess, all that is, source, force, whatever you want to name it, it doesn't matter, it doesn't care. Any name is appropriate because it has any name you can think of. So we are all made of the same one thing. When we know that and act like we know that, the world will be a very different place.
There are some spiritual movements today that will come around, and they'll make the argument that empathy is bad. I find this hilarious when that they would represent themselves as a group or with a spiritual idea that there's anything wrong with empathy. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because clearly I think that as we advance, empathy will grow, and it's the
Yeah,
key.
yeah, absolutely it is. Again, that's how you relate to one another. Now, I understand that people can be overly sensitive to things and they can experience an empathic connection that can actually feel negative if they take on too much energy from another person. But it's not even that they're taking that energy on, it's that they're matching that vibration with their own energy. You can only feel your own energy, but you can match the frequency of another so strongly that you can experience what they're experiencing. And in that context, you can take empathy too far, I'll say. You can not necessarily use it in a positive way by succumbing to the vibration of another person to the point where you can't do anything to help yourself or them. So I understand that that may be why they're saying, oh, empathy is bad. It's not that empathy is bad. It's that they may be taking empathy to a place that doesn't serve anyone, because then you're just wallowing in the same vibration that someone else is wallowing in and having the same negative experience that they're having. And then no one is able to help anyone. Empathy is to be used to identify what another person is going through, but then you stabilize yourself so that you can help them. The empathy is to understand them, and then you can stabilize yourself and use that knowledge to help them out of the negative vibration that they're doing, that they're creating for themselves, the negative experience. So it's about how you use your empathic gifts that determines whether you're experiencing it positively or negatively. And just saying empathy is bad means all they're doing is experiencing it negatively.
Right. One thing I can say just from my own interpersonal experience, if I look back over the last 20 years, that I believe that in my consciousness and what I see outside of me is empathy is increasing. In the past, we might watch a news show, and something terrible happens to someone, and it just kind of goes, okay, well, that's just happened. Now we watch it and we feel what they're feeling.
And
We
that's great.
experience,
And that's great.
yeah,
But then we have to stabilize so we can help them. We can't just
right.
follow, we can't just continue down that and go, oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. We just feel bad. That's not where you leave it. That you have to take the actions that will help them understand they may have other choices. Now, again, you can't force that on anyone, because what they do with what you give them is none of your business, because you don't know their life path and you don't know what lessons they may need to learn. But if you're put in a position to empathize with someone and have the ability, when appropriate, to share information or take actions that can help them know that there's another choice, do your best to do so. But you don't have to beat your head against a brick wall trying to force them to do it. Because if they say basically by one way or another, I don't want your information right now, I can't relate to your information right now, even if you think it will help me, you have to let that go because you have to let them learn their lessons in their own time and in their own way. You don't know. Maybe they'll get it tomorrow. Maybe they'll 10 years from now, they'll go, I remember what that guy said to me. And now it really will help because now I'm in a position to understand it and I'm in a position to use it and apply it to my life. So you never know when what you've shared with them will help them. You don't have to insist on knowing when that should be because it's not your life path.
So we're really super excited that Darryl is going to visit us on July 25th at our event in Anaheim. I'm incredibly excited to actually meet you in person, and people in the audience will be able to ask you questions as well. The link is in the description if you guys want to participate with us. That's going to be a phenomenal experience.
Be fun.
Also, some I didn't know that Darryl has his own escape room in Calabasas. My brothers and sisters in Southern California, we can actually go to one of Darryl's escape rooms. It's at boggledescaperooms.com is where I
Yes,
would find it.
escaperooms.com. This is one expression of my passion, following of my passion. Again, coming out of the film industry, my skill set of building sets and props and telling stories is being utilized this way to give people different experiences, to help them problem solve, to help them have communication with each other and have a fun time getting out of themselves and doing something different. So by all means, if you want to come and play and have a different experience in the different worlds we're creating in our escape rooms, go to boggledescaperooms.com and pick a day, pick a game, pick a time. Come and play.
I love it. So tell me your favorite. I want to get an idea of your favorite movie. Give me your favorite movie.
That's a really hard thing to answer because,
It's true.
but
Maybe
I do love the movie Arrival. I think it's a brilliant film. And again, more positive idea of alien interaction, of first contact with an alien species in a very different way. So that's certainly one of them. But I have a lot of different favorite movies in different
I can
genres,
imagine.
stuff like that.
Is there a movie I probably haven't heard of that you would recommend I check out?
Well, I don't know what you haven't heard of.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
you know,
okay. Have you ever seen The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken?
I love it. Classic
Okay, there
Stephen
you go.
King adaptation
There
for
you
sure.
go.
Uh-huh.
Wow, a movie you haven't heard. I don't know
Well,
what.
a movie that most people haven't heard of. I probably have heard of it, but there's always that I'm always on the lookout for another good movie. So that's one of my passions. My excitement is to catch a good movie. So I'd love to get your perspective on this. It feels like that we're in an age when something special happens when you go into the movie theater because you got to put your phone away. It's like a little meditation
Of
for
course.
people. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Um,
going into a shared consensus experience, you're suspending your disbelief. You're allowing the reality
right.
of the movie to be real for the amount of time that it's running. And it gives you a different way of experiencing things. See, that's what I like about the escape rooms is in a sense, it's like going to the movies, but actually being in it physically.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so, it's like having a mystery to solve inside the movie. You're solving puzzles, you're finding clues, you're moving through the environment in an unusual way. And that's why it's fun. So, God, I don't know, a movie that go think back here to more obscure movies. Maybe I'll have that answer for you by the time we're in Anaheim.
In Anaheim, I would love to get an answer, get some suggestions for good movies because I'm always open and always ready. Any great science fiction novels that you might recommend, or even it doesn't have to be science fiction, just novels. But I'm generally into sci-fi myself.
Well, here's yeah, I mean, uh The Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown, his latest novel.
We'll love that one. Yeah.
actually explores consciousness in a very realistic way and in a very interesting way. So I would recommend that as a novel to people. Have you read it?
It's on my list. It's on my
Yeah.
shelf right here. So, because
Okay.
I
So
love Dan Brown. I mean, he's
I would
never made a
definitely
bad book
read
to
the
me. So,
Secret of Secrets. There's an
all right.
extremely important issue in there with regard to what consciousness experiences under certain altered states. And I think it's a critical idea that can open up a different world for people. Even though it's a fictional novel, the research he's done on consciousness is real, and he's adapting it into the story in a very interesting way. So The Secret of Secrets, I think, is a very good novel to read.
The other before it, because it just came to me, and a lot of people want to know, like, all these fictional worlds that we're reading about, Tolkien and Star Wars, and they feel real. It feels to me that these places exist. That in many times when we're experiencing these fictional worlds, they're actually real. Has Bashar.
I don't know if they're real in every single detail. I think they're real as places in terms of the feeling and intention of them. We may be adapting the details in ways that make sense to us. I don't know if they're absolutely literal physical places in exactly every detail that we're depicting, because that's a story we need in that way. But I think the energy of those kinds of places do represent real realities, even if they look different.
Love it. So everybody can check out boggledescaperooms.com, bashar.org. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real joy. It's been I've wanted to talk to you for so long. It's a real pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again on July 25th in Anaheim. And welcome to the Reality Revolution,
Thank you so
Darryl.
much for having me. I appreciate it. We'll look forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing you in Anaheim.
That'll be great.
All right. Bye.
There is a version of your life where everything you've been reaching for arrives, where the money flows, where love opens, where your body heals, where every step carries the frequency of the self you were always meant to be. That life exists, and the path to it has been 8 years in the making. This July, the Reality Revolution comes home to Anaheim. 3 full days of teaching, meditation, and timeline activation. 9 complete sessions designed to move you from the life that you're living to the life that is waiting. Activate your pineal gland, meet your higher self, quantum jump into your greatest timeline, enter the bliss body healing state, step into the flow of large sums of money, open fully to love, shift to a higher density new earth. Friday night, the community celebrates together. Saturday evening, a special appearance from Darryl Anka. And by Sunday evening, you walk out as the version of yourself your future self has been waiting for.
I knew I had to be in the room because it's different from like listening to the meditation videos online.
It was really getting into yourself and how you feel and your timelines.
It's time at the event, and it really is. It's wonderful. So, I would highly recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. It really is amazing.
The Reality Revolution live in Anaheim, July 24th, 25th, and 26th. Hilton, Anaheim. 3 days that will change the trajectory of your life. Claim your seat at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim.